you check the children? Show a little match
Hi, I'm Chucky. Wanna play?
Sometimes that is better.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Horror Show. I'm Cecil Laird.
Fuego here.
We are back to do another patron-requested review. This is another one from Seth T. Miller. He is our resident werewolf requester, and we did his request a few months ago of An American Werewolf in London, and now we are doing An American Werewolf in Paris, which I believe might have been actually the first one of the series for me to watch. This was in the mid to late 90s.
96, 97-ish
Right,
area?
so it's
something like
around there, and it was when I was getting much heavier into horror, you know, going to see all the horror movies in the theater.
Were you working at the video store already?
Yeah, I was. Yeah, I started at 15, so I had already been working at the video store, and I absolutely was excited about this, and at the time, I absolutely loved it, because it was the most werewolf stuff that we'd seen in a werewolf movie. Whether CG or not, it was the most actual werewolf action that we had gotten by that point. I loved it at the time. Upon rewatch, I will say the CG absolutely does not hold up where it doesn't draw you out of the movie. However, they did mix in a healthy portion of actual practical effects to mix in with the CG shots, so I think that was much more successful as a result. So overall, I think this movie does hold up in a lot of respects. I think it is, a lot of people are like, it's stupid, it's trying to be funny. It's like, yeah, the first one was a comedy as well. This one is a comedy, but they took it a step further. They actually used some of the CG and otherwise effects to make jokes this time. And I thought it was a good time. I enjoy American Werewolf in Paris. Crucify me, I don't care.
I'm right there with you, so I guess, I mean, where's our third person to be on the cross? I'm honestly wondering what Robert Jewell would think about this one, because he is very much the werewolf expert in our camp at this particular point, but I don't know if I'd ever watched this movie in its entirety. I really don't think I had. I kind of think I saw trailers, and maybe it was on at a party or something when I was in high school or whatever, but I don't think I had ever sat down and watched this very just intently in its entirety. This movie's fun. It actually made me laugh, man, and I have always had a soft spot for the cute little Frenchie, Miss Julie Delpy. You know, whether it's the Before movies, or trying to remember if it's Killing Zoe or Surviving the Game or whatever. It was the one with Eric Stoltz where she was the prostitute, but nonetheless, man, she is a terrific actress, and she's cute and fun in this movie, and you know, despite being an American movie and whatever. Tom Everett Scott, I'm
nice
glad.
Body too.
I'm glad, yeah, and she shows her goodies a few times in this. But then again, a lot of French actresses, it's weird from what I've heard. Like, they don't like to show their butts in Europe, but they'll show their boobs at will. It's like a weird sort of thing. Topless beaches and stuff. I don't know. Maybe that has something to do with it. But Tom Everett Scott was always dude from Dead Man on Campus, and that's kind of
how I know him.
That's kind of what I thought. But he's actually charming in his kind of goofiness in this movie. He has two much more horn doggy friends that he's going through
Sex
Europe
points.
With. Yeah, exactly. Which we'll get to as we go. But dude, this
we
movie,
get to sex points.
Ooh. This movie is funny though, and dare I say, I had forgotten until a recent rewatch of American Werewolf in London just how much of a comedy that movie is, because so many people remember the grisliness of the transformation.
I was in that camp,
and I was totally too.
I had
and also
forgotten
and
how
the practical
funny
of the
it tried to be.
sliced face of that guy, his dead friend,
The
and whatnot.
deterioration of him, no less.
True, that as well. So I just remembered visuals and stuff as opposed to the actual tone of the John Landis film. Interesting tidbit is the fact that apparently the reason this was entitled American Werewolf in Paris, as I was doing some research, is the fact that I guess they had, in the 11th hour before they started shooting the London version of the film, they thought they were going to have to change locations, and so Landis actually went out and scouted a bunch in the Paris area. And so they were thinking they might have to change the title of the film, which is why this one took the particular route that it did, which is funny. But this is much more of a comedy. I would say this is like American Werewolf in London meets American Pie in a lot of ways, based on the tone 90s. Of some of the comedy, the like blowing of the condom, and I'm like, oh, I saw that in Coneheads, where he's like chewing condom, doing all that crap. But this movie's amusing. It's very of its time, though, from score to, a lot of the humor. But I guess since I came up in that time, I'm maybe a little more forgiving,
So the story is about 3 friends that are part of a daredevil group that are going around the world doing stuff and earning points amongst themselves to play a game. They get to Paris and they go to the Eiffel Tower, and one of the dudes who was just made fun of for an extended period of time on the train in between countries is like, screw it, I'm going to really go crazy. So he ties himself up by a bungee cord and is about to leap off, but his friends are like, come on, man, we were just messing with you. You don't need to do this. And as he's, contemplating it, a French woman shows up, a beautiful French woman, Julie Delpy, shows up and basically steps off of the edge to try and kill herself. He jumps over the edge, grabs her, manages to set her down safely before he slingshots back up and creams himself on one of the bars of the Eiffel Tower. Wakes up in the hospital and, is smitten with this woman who he saved, needs to find her, needs to find out about her.
He has her shoes, so it's almost like a Cinderella.
Yeah. They track her down, and they get invited by this dude that's intertwined in her life to this party for Americans. And, during it, there is an attack, and a bunch of werewolves attack. He is taken by her away from the party down into the sewers to try and get away, but she turns into a wolf, ends up biting him, and he changes into a werewolf as well. And so now but he gets away. He doesn't get, torn up or anything. He just gets bitten, and then he slowly starts to change, and then he starts to accidentally get people killed, like in the first movie. And so the undead start to show up and torment him and be sort of the slapstick people of the movie. And it's about this guy trying to save his remaining friend, because one of the friends he lost that same night, and deal with his newfound werewolf curse. So, that's the long and short of the story, and it's full. It's a chock full story. I feel like it did its job. It wasn't like, the deepest story ever, but it absolutely did its job for a werewolf horror movie. I enjoyed it. It was a roller coaster ride.
Yeah, and I will also say that I appreciate the fact that even though there's callback elements of, like, the dead friend who can't cross over, but they did kind of James Cameron it, with the fact that it has to be bigger and louder and whatever, and the fact that there's also a girl that he sees at the bar, who most of you will recognize from Modern Family, that she's cutie with little short hair back all these years ago, and they go to Jim Morrison's grave, and it's one of the funniest little bits in this movie. And she ends up, we're not going to specify any, like how it happens, but there's 2 people eventually tormenting him, and so he's going through all of that. I will say the one thing where it starts to feel like an overstuffed turkey is the antagonist aspect of, like, these weird skinhead French werewolves. It's a little much, man.
I don't think it's an overstuffed turkey. I think that makes sense in the world that they created, honestly.
Okay, well, credit to them at least for having a completely different sort of, like, having an actual enemy. Because really, in the previous film, American Werewolf in London, it's really him just fighting against his own internal enemy, whereas in this one, it's trying to...
Internal and external.
Yeah, exactly. There is a physical force, and by force I mean, like, a multitude of other werewolves that, in this one we have good werewolves and bad werewolves, as opposed to one singular infected person. And so I thought that was at least, like, props to them for doing something drastically different in that regard, and for an ending that's a lot different than the super bleak one of the previous films.
Yeah, not only that, but it also kind of tried to inadvertently follow the rules of Scream 2, where it got bigger and crazier and more death.
That's where I say the Cameron approach and the fact that it has to be bigger and more action and more whatever.
But the nice thing about, like, that's one of the fun things is that, you know, the scene that everyone remembers from the first American Werewolf in London movie was when the wolf is on the loose in London. And there's at least 3 different mass chaos scenes going on in this movie.
Most of them at raves with lots of music of the time
and flashing lights to hide effects, but it worked. And then they would cut to close-ups of the wolves lunging at people, and the close-ups would be practical. So it was intelligent use of CG when they knew that the CG wouldn't sustain close-ups for long periods of time.
Yeah, this was back in the day, and I guess we segued into effects and stuff.
Yeah, we have.
But the thing is, Seth C. Miller, because I know you were the one who requested this, and shout out to you.
Straight up, Seth. Thank you for keeping this going.
For all the Wolfie stuff,
I'm excited for all the Wolf movies I haven't seen that I'm going to watch as a result of your requests.
Yeah, because I've never been super into werewolf stuff, man. But this is
I always have. I just haven't watched them all.
Opening my eyes to that sort of thing. I even rewatched Wolf of Snow Hollow the other day.
We need to do a single review of that.
And I liked it a lot more than I did the first time, like the twist in it. But that's off topic.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, this is one where it was still at that time where they blended a la Jurassic Park and, you know, at least the first one, where they blended practical with some, you know, CGI sort of augmentation for, like, mostly movement scenes, I think, was when they really did it, you know, and for some transformation. But even the initial transformation of Tom Everett Scott's character, I did not think that CGI looked bad, and this is a very well shot.
And there's still some practical
film.
stuff that they do in the midst of the CG transformations, which sells it. It sells, like, that's what this movie is really good at doing, is selling the CG via quick interstitial practical shots. It's crazy how well it actually works together.
Yeah.
That took a lot of planning ahead of time to make sure your CG moments would flow into the close-ups that are practical.
Yeah, especially if it's all within one scene or one segment or beat or whatever, to know, okay, we're going to have to use this for this and this for this, and how well is it going to seamlessly kind of transition and stuff and not pull the viewer out. Granted, there was a bit here and there.
There's more than a bit. There's quite a bit.
Can I contend?
Quite a bit
of
the CG
Can I contend, though, for me, it wasn't too far off of that Wolfman with Benicio del Toro that we also reviewed.
It's worse than that.
You think it's worse than that? Well, it's years before, obviously.
It's worse than that.
I think the lighting helped in this.
They did. They knew what they were working against, but it's so CG at times that it just doesn't blend with the environment until they cut to those practical shots.
Yeah, I didn't hate it.
But
though.
at the time when it came out, I was like, this is the coolest
cutting-edge
werewolf movie I've ever seen in my life. Look at this in Underworld was like, look at how much werewolf you can actually show in a movie. Like, this legitimately deserves credit for being one of the first werewolf movies through the door to be like, boom, wolves!
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like, it deserves credit for that.
It's so tough for rapid movement with a guy in a suit that looks convincing. I don't know. It's tough in that regard. But
I'm always going to give it credit for being first through the door to do that much wolf stuff that we got. You know what I mean? Like, every scene that has werewolves occurring features the werewolves. It's not done in flashes. And some might say that's a detractor. That's a downfall of the movie.
Yeah, the whole lingering on the CGI too long as opposed to...
Yeah, I mean, they're like, it didn't... You know, the Jaws approach works better for werewolf movies.
Or
and
for,
that's
any
arguable.
Monster, a lot of
that's
people
definitely arguable. But movies like this, movies like Underworld, they don't care. They're not going for that approach. They're going for the... Here's all the wolves. This is what it would be like to be in a crowd in the midst of a werewolf attack. You know what I mean? And I think they were successful in those instances. So I think while the effects are dated at times, I think they absolutely serve the overall story and presentation of the film.
This was also another one of those in the late 90s, early 2000s where the soundtrack was a big thing. I will always think
Nothing
of
hurts like your mouth,
Bush,
mouth.
That song became a hit because of this movie.
Absolutely. This soundtrack I owned, and it was one I would put on all the time. This and The Crow, and like there was a few movies.
The soundtrack had Funk Junkies. Those local guys were on the
I
soundtrack.
like the
man.
Funk Junkies.
I do too.
I did.
That guy used to come into the hair salon I worked under.
They were the lead-in to the first Offspring show I ever watched.
Yeah. Well, they
in
were
1996. That
they were
damn
kind
show.
of that 311 rap rock sort of approach. They're on this, so shout out to those local boys. It was a stacked soundtrack, and I still remember seeing on the box, and then even later on, MTV and stuff, that video for Mouth by Bush. It was iconic. It had a lot of scenes interspersed from the film in it, and I think he was like out in this like dilapidated, like deserty kind of area where there was almost like the sunken in terrain where with like the dried up mud and whatever. But it was a great video, great song, and also just the convincingness of the snarling and the ripping of flesh and all that
sound
stuff.
design.
Sound design
was
good
solid.
in this movie, man. It is.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, when you watch it, this is one of the movies that you watch it and you're like, that was a trailer moment. That was a trailer moment.
There's a lot of them.
That was a trailer moment. Like, I remember the trailer, I'm not a wolf! And then the moment where the thing busts into the mausoleum and like, I was like, yeah, dude, trailer moment. Like, this movie was almost built around trailer moments, but it's so silly, but it's so enjoyable.
Lots of stuff at the time was. I mean, most coming from Dimension, and I don't think this was Dimension, although I can't remember for sure, but I mean, pretty much anything horror, I guess, that was coming in the mid to late 90s like this, that had that slight self-awareness to it, that was going with the meta vibe of everything in the 90s as far as scary shizzle goes. This had it, man, and solid cast. I'm actually an apologist for this movie.
I am too. So in the 90s, in the late 90s, after this had been out even a few years, I would have said that I like this better than the original. I don't think I can say that now. However, I do think that there's a place for this. I think that this absolutely belongs in the werewolf pantheon as one of can we say top 10 of all werewolf movies of all time?
I would say, I mean, since
top 15 for sure.
15 to 20 for sure.
15 to 20 for sure.
But since I haven't seen as many werewolf movies to compare, that's
we
where
need to do
that's
a
where
werewolf
I would wonder.
tier list.
Well,
we did the Howling, but we didn't do
Robert
werewolves.
Dewell, man, he would have so many. I mean, whether it's Wolfen or Bad Moon.
We should see if Seth Miller wants to join us for a werewolf tier list.
That would be a good.
After all of his recommendations, I'll reach out to him on Patreon, see if he wants to do that.
Yeah, please do. But
shout out to Seth T. Miller again, guys. If you want to be a patron, he's been a patron for well over a year at this point because we've done a bunch of werewolf movies. The entire Howling month or the Howling week and a half that we did, covering the entire series. And the tier list ranking that Robert and I did, that was all because of Seth T. Miller requesting 3 of the movies. Yeah. He's been requesting us do these werewolf movies, and we've been doing them, and I enjoy the hell of it. I am a werewolf genre lover. I truly, truly am.
I still prefer vampies, but
how has he not requested any of the ginger snaps yet? That's interesting.
I thought...
No, we've never done any of the ginger snaps. No.
I've only watched the first one. There's 3, right?
The 3 are, they're all solid. 3 is that, it was in that trend in the late 90s where the third would be like
video.
No, it was a prequel, like in the 1800s.
Oh, so it didn't have...
It's the same actresses, but just playing characters in the 1800s
Because I know they recast Kate in the third
No, Catherine
one.
Isabel's in all of them.
No. In the third... in the third Underworld, for instance.
Oh, yeah.
They had a different Selena, didn't they?
Yeah,
maybe they
No,
didn't
it wasn't.
have her
It was
in
a
there
different
at all.
character. It wasn't Celine.
Okay, because they still had the father.
They
in
brought
there.
Celine back in 4.
He was just younger. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. The third Underworld told the story of the werewolf guy and his lover.
The second Underworld is still my favorite, man. I mean, that's good stuff. But yeah,
we never reviewed those on the channel.
Yeah, no, we haven't. There's a lot of them.
I have the entire collection.
Kate Beckinsale, Scott.
We need to do that, and we need to do all the Resident Evils at some point as well.
Yeah, with the new Resident Evil game coming out. Did you watch any of that?
By the way, I think we can finally do the next installment of the franchise tier list rankings because Skyline is now 3.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of movies that are now 3 that we can throw on there, including one that we just finished reviewing that wasn't 3 before the last month.
So yeah, patrons, if there is a particular series you would like us to cover, tier list, whatever, obviously let us know.
Let us know. So thank you guys very much for watching this review. Until next time, I've been Cecil Laird.
Gracias again, Seth. I've been Jaime Fuego.
And remember, Oh!